Several months ago, Shannon Goldstein came before our Beit inquiring about treatment options for her father, Leib Goldstein. Leib suffers from Alzheimer's and is currently hospitalized due to a heart attack. He cannot interact meaningfully with his surroundings and relies on an intra-aortic balloon pump, or IABP, to help him breathe. Shayna, who has been entrusted with making Leib's medical decisions, came before us with 3 medical treatment options: leaving the IABP in place, treating him with medicine, or performing surgery. Today, we will present to you the option that is most philosophically acceptable. But first, let's talk about the fundamental Jewish value of lo tamod adam re'echa. Based on this verse, Talmud Sanhedrin 73a explains that if a man is in danger, a person is obligated to do anything necessary to save him. Preserving life is so important that, as stated in Talmud Yoma, it even transcends observance of Shabbat. If there is even the slimmest chance of saving someone who has heavy structure fall on him, we are obligated to do so to save his Chayei Sha'ah, which is the brief amount of time that one is expected to live without intervention. Therefore, we must do anything necessary to end Leib's suffering, preserve his health, and save his life.
Now, if Shayna kept the IABP in Leib's system, he would remain sedated and would never have an independent life again. In this case, the IABP would be the only thing postponing his death. With regard to a gosses, a critically ill patient, the Shulchan Aruch teaches that one is encouraged to remove any obstacle that prolongs the death process. Furthermore, the Tzitz Eliezer states that if a patient is relying solely on one device for sustenance, we are encouraged to remove that device since the patient has no hope for an independent life. Therefore, once again, we see that the IABP must be removed. The permission for shortening his death is found in Masechet Avodah Zarah, which tells the story of Rabbi Chanina being burned at the stake with wet tufts of wool around his heart to prolong his suffering and postpone his death. With Rabbi Chanina's consent, the executioner increases the flames and removes the tufts of wool in order to speed up his death. Ultimately, we learn that any actions taken to shorten a painful death are acceptable. Conversely, the IABP increases Leib's chances of contracting a different fatal disease. In Hilchot Rotzeach, Rambam dictates that it is a mitzvah aseh to remove any object that can pose danger to life. If we keep the IABP in place, we neither save Leib's life nor end his suffering. Therefore, this option is illogical, immoral, and halachically impermissible.
Another treatment option for Leib is to manage his condition with medication, which would allow Leib to be awake and live for a few months while being stuck in the hospital. The Tzitz Eliezer 1480 permits lengthening the life of a gosses if doing so allows for independent life. Furthermore, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach teaches in Yishmat Abraham that withholding therapy that allows one to recover a quality of life is forbidden. Here, we must draw the distinction between postponing death and preventing death. Postponing death entails lengthening the time of suffering until eventual death, while preventing death entails treating and fixing the initial problem. In general, medicine is palliative and could help prevent death of even a gosses. However, in Leib's case, medicine would be the only thing postponing death. The CCAR response on the treatment of the terminally ill states that in the case where medicine is the only force postponing the death of a dying person, administering it is forbidden. Therefore, Shayna is not allowed to permit medication for Leib. That leaves Shayna with the first option, a bypass operation around the obstruction that originally caused the heart attack. This option follows the aforementioned idea of doing anything necessary to save someone who is terminally ill. Shayna must do everything in her power to save Leib's life, therefore justifying surgery.
Nonetheless, Leib's surgery is rather risky in that he only has a 70% chance of survival. One argument against such a surgery is that the doctor may fear losing his patient on the operating table. However, Touré Deah addresses this fear and states that a doctor who does not proceed with saving Leib's life would be committing a crime as bad as murder. This introduces another very important idea that justifies the surgery. The idea that surgery is worth the risk. We learn from Igrot Moshe Hoshen Mishpat that a patient may not refuse risky treatment if refusal would lead to a certain death. Additionally, Responsa Minchas Shlomo teaches that if the options are between healing and suffering, we must at least try to heal, even if the healing process comes with some side effects. Therefore, surgical risk is permitted in the name of preserving life. But one may ask, how much risk? Rabbi Chaim Schechter explains in his article, High-Risk Medical Procedures, that a risk of death greater than 50% is forbidden. Ivro Moshe Yoreh Deah teaches that even if the chances for survival are slim to none, we are still allowed to permit the surgery. Leib surgery only has a 25 to 30% risk. Therefore, based on the principle of Kal V'chomer, the surgery is perfectly permissible. Rabbi Dr. Baruch Brody understood this logic and advised the physician to perform a risky surgery on a patient who would die without intervention. In his article titled Jewish Casuistry on Suicide Euthanasia, Brody explains that it is permissible to risk a ghostess's remaining life in order to extend his life. Rav Shlomo Eger teaches in Gilyon Maharsha that even a surgery to extend a patient's life by a day or two is worth it. A final factor to consider is that of quality of life. One might argue that since Leib has Alzheimer's and is in a weak mental and physical state, no amount of surgery is worth saving him. But Igro Moshe Choshen Mishpat contradicts this claim by teaching that we must save a life without regard to intellect or competence. Clearly, surgery is the way to go. Today, Shana is faced with a tough choice, but option A is morally and halachically the most acceptable. This option preserves life and minimizes suffering, so it must be done. The surgery is the best option Leib has for living out his normal lifespan with his loving daughter. As the Beit Din, we hereby rule in favor of the surgery. Thank you.
I have a question about the CCAR ruling. If you could go back to it, I'd like to look at it. I believe it said that if medication was the only thing keeping somebody alive, you weren't allowed to administer it. Is that what? No, it goes back.
Yeah.
There it was. You just, okay. Medicine may not be the only treatment preserving life. And I'm just, I'm interested in how you interpreted this in terms of the notion of preserving life on the medication, what the medication was actually doing. How do you interpret this? I just find it a puzzling source.
Well, the CCAR, it says that, and I'm quoting now, offering no hope of cure or successful treatment, they serve only to delight his or her otherwise imminent death. They forbid use of those certain treatments that they say lack any trace
in place will guarantee that he lives till tomorrow. At the very least.
Yes.
At the very least.
Yes, at the very least.
Whereas surgery doesn't.
Well, the IABP, remember, the IABP doesn't save him, it doesn't cure his initial cardiovascular problem, which is why it is not as good as surgery. In surgery, it will cure his problem.
Leaving it in could also increase additional problems with these
I very much enjoy your passion about this idea of Tamas Damriyecha and saving life, and we're going to do everything in our power to preserve life, and I appreciate that. But you also had a slide there, and you said this, and I just want to clarify, we must do anything, or we can't do anything to save someone's life. I want you to dwell on that word anything. I don't know if we can do anything, especially when we need to entail risk factors, and what are the real probabilities, and what kind of life we're really preserving, and how much health and curing can we really accomplish. What is this we must do anything? Can you clarify more what this anything is?
So I think we should amend the wording a little bit. Anything within reason. Like, we're not going to go to terribly far extents with risks 99.9%. Now, in this case, since the risk is only 30%, I think it does fall into that category of anything within reason, as opposed to the other options that Shannon does have.
Remember, the tool you read day after 336 says that even if there is a risk, by not taking that risk to save his life, you are committing a crime as bad as murder.
But in those risks, well, the outcome would be what would lead to a really positive, complete outcome of a perfect life, right? Right? Take the risk in order to bring a perfect life. Is that the case over here?
Right. So the surgery, if he, there's a 70% chance of survival, and there's also another 65 to 70% chance he's going to live out his normal lifespan. And the surgery is the only option that assures him the quality of life, while the medicine will maybe give him a month, and leaving the IVP in place could maybe give him a week or a couple weeks. So it gives him the best quality of life with the most amount, the longest life and the most quality, the best quality of life.
Just one last comment, if I may. You had a slide about passively causing euthanasia based on starvation and tridione, that he increased the flame. So a number of the sources dealt with that, and they said, well, actually increasing the flame was prohibited. So actively shortening someone's life, passive euthanasia, it seemed to indicate that the act of euthanasia would be permissible according to Jewish law. And I think most of those sources would have indicated that that story is troubling for a number of reasons, not least of which is that the person adding the flame, I think Moshe Feinstein wrote like that certainly doing so is forbidden. And so I'd be a little bit nervous about using that as a source to actively do something to end someone's life based on that story.
So